Salve Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. While Jesus was speaking, an official came forward, knelt down before him, and said, "My daughter has just died. But come, lay your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus rose and followed him, and so did his disciples. A woman suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the tassel of his cloak. She said to herself, "If only I can touch his cloak, I shall be cured." Jesus turned around and saw her and said, "Courage, daughter, your faith has saved you." And from that hour, the woman was cured. When Jesus arrived at the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd who were making a commotion, he said, "Go away, the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. When the crowd was put out, he came and took her by the hand, and the little girl arose. And news of this spread throughout all the land. The Gospel of the Lord. It's interesting that this synagogue official greets Jesus by kneeling at his feet. This is a posture of worship, which you wouldn't think that someone who's well connected with the synagogue would do for someone. Because, mind you, they did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah, nor did they think he was God. So to kneel before Jesus would have been idolatrous. But this guy gets it. And his faith is recognized. He sees the lordship of Jesus, the Almighty. And this woman also, Jesus says she has faith, which means that when she touched him, she understood that she was touching God. And so the healings come. If you get to know people who are involved in recovery and using the 12 steps, the first step is that you have to recognize there's a higher power over you. And it's one thing to recognize the higher power, which many of them do. And so they experience sobriety. But there's a characteristic of sobriety that they call, this is of course proper for anybody with narcotics or alcohol, but we'll use the term for alcoholics. If somebody gets sober, but they don't really change their life, they're what we call a dry drunk. They still act like they're drunk, but they're not drinking. Because they haven't gone so far as to allow the higher power, God, to really influence their lives. They haven't allowed God to touch them. These two healings particularly take place through the physical contact of Jesus. God is touched and he touches. This is what happens. And so he wants to get personal and touch us and begin to influence the very fabric of our lives. And so we begin to change, being open to his grace. And because he touches us, we also begin to get touched spiritually, and we experience healing, and we change. And so we're no longer the person we were. This is signified also if you back up into the book of Genesis, where Jacob has this dream. Now, in 8 more chapters, it's going to take 8 more chapters of Genesis for the promise to be fulfilled to Jacob, and where he will be given a new name, showing a huge change in his life. He gets the new name of Israel in chapter 35 of Genesis. But he has gone through a lot, and all the time learning great lessons from God, and finally changes to the point where he gets this new name. Remember, Jacob is the one who kind of deceived getting the birthright blessing, stole it from his brother Esau. And he's kind of a conniving person. And in the next few chapters of Genesis, as it unfolds for us in the lectionary readings, you're gonna see how it all comes back to haunt him. And he has to undergo this change and become a person who doesn't connive anymore, but a person now who uses his wits for the glory of God, because he finally gets it. When are we going to finally get it?
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrecti